Have you ever opened up a seed catalog and felt instantly overwhelmed? You're not alone. That feeling is called choice fatigue, and it's very profitable. Choosing seeds feels complicated because there are literally thousands of options. But growing your own food doesn't require buying and trying everything all at once. It requires choosing what actually fits your real life and your taste buds, because no one wants to grow something just to politely not eat it. There are three general seed categories that you're likely to see in the seed catalogs. The first one is F1 hybrids or hybrid. F1 hybrids are bred for specific genetic traits. They could be bred for color, texture, flavor, size, shape. The list goes on and on. They're often vigorous growers. They're typically more expensive because much of that cost goes into the development of that hybrid. And sometimes they have a patent which adds more cost to that seed. Now, I'm not endorsing hybrids or saying they're better than open pollinated, but they do have their benefits. They are optimized for predictable outcomes that you may be looking for, whether that be a taste, shape, flavor, texture, and on and on. They're optimized for predictability, which is comforting if your life already isn't. Now, with hybrids, you can save seeds, but know that the next generation will not automatically look like the parents. You're going to get a random distribution following your biology class from high school. If you remember those squares where you had genes from the mom and genes from the father, they get mixed up in a predictable pattern, and that's what you're going to end up if you do save seeds from F1 hybrid, but you can totally save them. Don't expect them to look exactly like the parent plant. Open pollinated seeds have more genetic variation. You can definitely save seeds from these, and the next generation will grow true to type. That's a horticulture term that we use to say that the offspring will look like the parents. That basically means you won't end up with Frankenstein baby tomatoes. They may be less uniform than an F1 hybrid, and sometimes they can be more prone to diseases. That just means they have a personality. Heirlooms are a subset of open pollinated seeds. They're often chosen for flavor, or they may have a history or a historical context. Maybe you have seeds that have been saved in your family that have been handed down from generation to generation. You can also save seeds from heirlooms too, just like open pollinated, but they're not automatically the best for beginning growers. The type of seed matters far less than your climate or the system that you're using, whether that be in-ground, raised beds, or containers. Some seed packets look expensive, especially newer hybrids, and they're marketed especially to get your attention. But seeds are actually one of the cheapest inputs into your garden. Let me explain. What's the expensive part, you might be asking? The answer: time and peace of mind. A hybrid seed might cost twice as much as an open pollinated variety, but if that particular hybrid has resistance to viruses or fungi and has an 80% chance of survival this growing season, while the cheaper open pollinated variety dies halfway through summer, suddenly the math changes, especially when you factor in all the time you spent watering, weeding, setting up trellises, and keeping the freaking squirrels off the tomatoes. That cheap seed ends up being a lot more expensive in the long run when you consider the time that you lost. And the fact that you don't have anything to show for it now because the plant's dead. The goal isn't to buy the most expensive seeds. The goal is to buy the seeds that fit your particular situation and have the highest chance of success to get you the food that you desire. Now for my 90-10 rule. I write a list every year and make 90% of the seed purchases that I buy something that I like to eat. Our popular ones here are tomatoes, hot peppers for sure, and sugar snap peas. The other 10% is used for experimentation, experimenting with new varieties, experimenting with new systems, experimenting with new growing methods. This works because, number one, it prevents seed catalog overbuying. It reduces disappointment, especially if you have a seed failure or a plant failure because of an unknown virus that you just found out for the first time. It reduces disappointment in case the crop fails or the produce doesn't taste like you expected it to taste. And I've had that multiple times with new varieties. It also protects your time. Some years the experiments are amazing, and some years the experiments of that 10% are educational, if you know what I mean. You typically see determinate and indeterminate varieties listed in the seed catalogs. Now for determinate plants. These plants go through a vegetative stage, a flower stage, and a fruiting stage, and then they're basically done. These typically are smaller and more compact plants. They demand nutrients and water in a very short growing window. You can think of them as sprinters. For indeterminate plants, these grow out their vegetative stage, they flower, and they fruit and then the cycle continues on and on and on until, like here in Minnesota, the frost will eventually kill them. But as a side note, it's not just the frost that's at the end of the season. You'll notice that around August or September, the sun is lower in the sky, especially with the northern climate like Minnesota, and so the plant naturally slows down its growth cycle. So even though the plant may be flowering and setting fruit, those fruits may not get to a stage where they're considered horticulturally mature, which means they're not going to taste very good because they're never going to finish ripening. Now, for a parallel, we use tomato already as an example. When we talk about another plant like beans, beans are listed as bush beans, which are a determinate type growing bean, or you might see pole beans, which are an indeterminate type of bean plant, similar to an indeterminate tomato plant. And if you're not paying attention when you order your seeds and plant them, you can easily install a plant that outgrows its space, even in a container. Ask me how I know. Now we're going to talk about plant cycles. You basically have 3 types of growth cycle seeds. We start with the annuals. Most of your vegetable garden are going to be known as annual seeds. Annuals grow 1 season. That includes their full life cycle, and then they're done. Some examples of annual plants include lettuce, beans, and peas. Biennials, in contrast, require 2 years to finish a life cycle. The vegetative growth starts in the first year and then flowers and produces fruit or seeds in the second year. 2 examples of these are carrots and kale. Both of these require patience and winter. Our last category are perennials. They will repeat growth and harvest cycles every year, but in the case of some fruiting plants like fruit trees, raspberries, and strawberries, they typically require more than 1 year to establish before fruiting. Some examples include strawberries, rhubarb, and fruit trees. Now, if you're choosing to grow in containers like I do, selecting seeds is a little bit different than growing in the ground or in a raised bed. I love looking for bush or dwarf style seeds or plants. Even though a seed or plant may not be labeled as container friendly, you still may be able to grow that plant in the container, meaning the container is large enough and the soil matches the plant's requirements. You just need to pay attention to the seed description and make sure that the container matches the plant or the seed. And an example of this is I love using a variety called Little Bites from Renee's Garden out of California. This plant will grow 2 feet tall and produce over 100 quarter-sized tomatoes per plant per year. And in my opinion, that's a fantastic return on the space. Now, for disease resistance, for sensitive plants like tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers, resistance to certain viruses and fungi or bacteria in your local environment is critical for setting yourself up for success this growing season. This is where your local land-grant university extension service is key to your success. They know about all the nasty viruses, fungi, and bacteria that live in your local environment. And typically, they will test your soil, which beats guessing. Many seed packets will list something that says direct sow or start seeds inside. Many direct sow crops can be started indoors. And in my experience, it reduces failure and anxiety because you know exactly what germinates before you transplant it into the ground. With the exclusion of many root crops like carrots, I've tried it. It was miserable. But if we would love to see S-shaped carrots, by all means, start carrots indoors and then transplant them. You don't need to grow everything. In fact, I would encourage you to put limits on your garden this year if this is your first or second year growing food. I also recommend you choose seeds that fit your lifestyle, your time, and your taste. Seed catalogs sell possibilities, but growing food is all about aligning the seeds with your lifestyle.